The Canada Reads competition is officially up and running. A few weeks ago, the long list was announced. I did a video breaking down these books into a little bit more detail and then predicting which ones I think would make the shortlist, or at least in my mind, which ones I thought should be on the shortlist. That shortlist was officially announced about a week ago, and one of my predictions made the list. Let's talk about it. So, my first and only pick of the draft that made it on there is A Minor Chorus by Billy Ray Belcool. Now, this tells the story of a student who is pursuing an academic career, but he ends up kind of leaving his dissertation and PhD journey halfway through to start writing a novel about his life and his community, his family, as a young queer Cree man. Something that has been part of my reading goals for multiple years now has been to read more First Nation, Inuit, and Métis authors. So there was no question that either way, I wanted to read this book. What I'm a little disappointed in, however, is the fact that this was the only Indigenous representation, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit representation on the Canada Reads list this year, which is a bit strange, given their track record. Usually there's at least 3 or 4 Indigenous authors on the long list. So I found that a little strange. I mean, I'm glad they're at least in the short list, because if we did a full Canada Reads season without touching on Indigenous issues, I think that would be a huge miss. So hopefully this book lasts a long time in the debates so that it's a perspective that can continuously be shared. The celebrity championing this book is El Maija Tailfeathers, who is part of the Kane First Nation. I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say about this book, and I cannot wait to read it. This might be the first one I pick up from the list. The second one to make it on the list was a hockey book, and I'm sorry, it was not Heated Rivalry. No, it was Searching for Terry Punchout. So this book is about a sports journalist, Adam, who has this opportunity to kind of make his breakout moment by profiling a famous Sports Illustrated journalist, Terry Punchout. Fun twist, Punchout is actually Adam's father. So doing this piece kind of forces him to go back to his hometown in rural Nova Scotia and reconnect with his childhood and some challenges that he had with his father. This sounds like a nice story. It's giving me similar vibes to Jenny's Boy, which I read from last year's Canada Reads Shortlist, and I generally didn't enjoy. I'm probably not going to read this book. And you know what? For a really long time, I was like, I need to read every book on Canada Reads Shortlist. Well, I'm not going to do that anymore because I've just been too disappointed. What I do now, however, is take my most anticipated reads from the long list and cut, copy, and paste and make my own short list that I end up reading the books from and doing a bit of an in-depth analysis of. It is pretty cool to see Steve Dangle championing Terry Punchout, because he is a sports hockey podcaster who's made it pretty big. I think he'll have some really fun, interesting commentary to say during the debates. I don't predict this will make it very far, but I look forward to the Nova Scotian representation and to hearing what Steve has to say. Y'all, Tegan from Tegan and Sarah is championing a book. That is really cool. From what I gather, her sister was a champion a while ago and did really well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how she does. She's seems like just a really cool person in general who cares a lot about queer representation and narratives and voices. So I think she'll do a good job with The Cure for Drowning, which, to be fair, was almost on my top five. I had this one and one other one kind of tied for fifth. So this was technically my sixth choice. And I will be reading this book. It sounds so good. This is about a young girl named Kit who grows up in a small rural Irish village, I believe, in like the 1930s. And she's kind of a tomboy. But when she's very young, she ends up falling in this frozen lake. And as she's nearing her end, her mother's Celtic magic actually saves her. Now, I'm still not 100% sure what this magic has to do with the plot, but I love some magic realism. Anyway, fast forward a bit of time. Kit ends up falling in love with this woman. Now, a bit of a twist, however, is that her brother ends up falling in love with the same person. This book sounds just so interesting because not only is there Celtic magic realism, like, yes, 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 but it's also going to be speaking to the complexity of what it was like growing up as a queer woman, especially in like a rural area in the 1930s. Like, I can't even imagine. But it will also cover complex sibling relationships. In the blurb in the back, it says something along the lines of like what you wouldn't do for your sibling. And so that leads me to believe that, you know, this might be quite tragic, quite heartbreaking, which I love in a book. Really interesting as well to see Tegan championing it because she herself is a twin, I believe, and her and her sister were quite famous for a long time. And I can only imagine the kind of challenges they would have had to navigate during their successes as well. I'm going to predict that this will go pretty far. Also, can we take a moment for this cover because it's stunning, perfect, gorgeous. We're going to have a Blues Clues guy on Canada Reads. That's cool. Can't say I know the actor, but many people are very excited about this. So great. He's going to be championing Foe by Ian Reid. And even though Foe wasn't on my prediction list, I did have a feeling it was going to be here because it is so popular. It's also been made into a series, which I've heard is really good. I'm going to be reading this book simply because everybody is saying this is a book that reads like a piece of theater. I'm a huge theater fan. I love slower paced movies. I love slower paced books, books that are heavy on dialogue and tension and reaction. So I will be reading this. Plus, the cast of this movie is 5 stars. So I'm in it. I'm going to go on this journey. I'll take you along with me. It's set in like a dystopian world, and a farmer gets this like special message where he's sent on a secret mission, I believe, in like outer space or something. And his wife is then home by herself and in a vulnerable position. So whoever has told him to go to space provides her with like a companion. Now, that's all I know. My guesses are that maybe she falls in love with this companion, or like, is this companion like a clone of this guy, or like, who is this companion? Anyway, I'm in, I'm bought, I'm sold. Take my money. Can't wait to read it. Next, we have a romance. It's different this time by Joss Richard. Um, we know how romance performs in Canada Reads. They're often the first to go. Not many people take them seriously, and not because there aren't serious things to talk about in romances. I will just say that, like, any book that ends up in these debates that's at all tropey, so like a tropey thriller or a romance that follows too many tropes, they all end up leaving first because that just ends up blocking people. It becomes super predictable. People know what's going to happen, and character development does tend to be minimal. Okay? It just does. This is about an actress who leaves LA because her show got canceled. She makes her way back to New York, where she's from, and she gets back in touch with, I believe, like her ex, who was also her past roommate, because there's some like handover paperwork stuff to get done for her to be able to move back into her house. I'm assuming it's like a second chance romance, potentially forced proximity romance. I don't have much else to say about the book than that. I won't read it, and my prediction is that it will go out first. But I will say I'm happy for the author. I'm happy for any author that gets onto these lists because it's just fantastic promotion for them. Romances just aren't my cup of tea. With that being said, I do want to talk about the person who was chosen to champion this book. The person chosen to champion this book is a young woman by the name of Morgan Book. Yes, her last name is Book. It's great. She's a famous book talker. So, someone who has become very famous on social media for reviewing books, reading books, sharing thoughts, etc. And I love it when they feature a book influencer because these are people who are on top of it. They know what's upcoming. They know authors like the back of their hand. They read usually diverse authors, diverse genres, etc. This year, however, Canada Reads made a bit of a mistake. Now, I will always reiterate how reading is political. Something that is very obvious is that any sort of literary competition is also heavily political. And Canada Reads choosing Morgan to champion a book is a political decision. Morgan, in her social media channels, often spotlights very problematic authors who are very racist, authors who are homophobic and transphobic, authors who are Zionists. And you know what? It took me 1 minute to find that out. It took me 1 minute to find out that this book influencer highlights and supports very problematic authors. It was so disappointing to see because there are so many phenomenal influencers out there who are educated in this, who understand that reading is political, that are going to not highlight certain authors because they are problematic and because they are directly harming people. And Morgan hasn't done that. I'm not expecting them to like get the most controversial book talker, but to so obviously choose someone who won't ask the hard questions or who won't bring up like difficult, complex topics is just a bummer. It's a really big missed opportunity, and I'm disappointed in that. Anyway, all that to say, I won't be reading this book. Okay, so to wrap it up, these are the books I will read on this year's shortlist. These are the other books that I will read from this year's long list. These books from the long list I did go deeper into in a previous video, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. I think this makes for a total of 9 books from the long list that I'll be reading this year. Last year I was able to get through 7 or 8, so this seems pretty doable. I'll be checking in regularly with you folks to give you my thoughts around each of these books. Also, tune in during the Canada Reads competition week. Even though I have strong opinions about certain things, I will still be tuning in and watching the debates. I always love hearing the arguments and the questions. I think in general, Ali does a great job hosting as well. And I think the questions can be good to take to other books at like a book club or whatnot. So I'll be tuning in. I hope you do too. And let me know which ones from the short list you will for sure be reading, and which ones from the long list are interesting to you as well. Catch you next time.